Four Midwest Guys presents Star Trek Picard Review.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Four Midwest Guys Presents Picard Review. As you can see, today I'm flying with my first officer, Mr. Angenbauer, so all systems are on automate. Speaking of which, we have a new kind of setup here at Four Midwest Guys. We've kind of flipped the room around to give us more space, kind of make it seem a little bit more open. We're still working on a few bugs and details here, but we're getting settled in, and I hope you like it. I hope you like to feel a lot better. I know I already do, comfort-wise, and hopefully you will too. But, however, because it's just me and you, and let's just get a little bit more comfortable with each other here, and let's just zoom on in. There we go. So now it's just me and you, and let's talk about Season 1, Episode 8, Broken Pieces. So really, this episode has several parts, much like the last episode, except there's two other points going on, and then the one in the middle is we kind of get everybody's background story that ties in to the bigger plot at hand. So that's kind of how I'm going to go about this podcast review. Is we're going to talk about each one of these scenes, and especially the second one. When I go through the second one, we'll kind of go through there's kind of the subplots that are going on and how it all ties in. And then we'll move on to a couple other scenes that don't quite tie in, but wrap up the podcast nicely, I think so, and that deserve to be talked about as well. So that's our format. So there's a lot to talk about here. I really wish Brian was with me because there's a lot going on in this episode. There's a lot of mysteries unfolded and revealed, but bear with me as it's just me and you, and I will do my best to give you what you need here for what was Season 1, Episode 8, Broken Pieces. So let's begin, shall we? So every Picard episode so far has started with some sort of a flashback scene. This one starts with a strange kind of star system that take us through like some nebulas and stuff, and we zoom in on what we find out is an octary system, which is 8 different suns all rotating around each other, and then there's this one lone planet in the middle of these 8 suns literally rotating around each other. And in the middle of this, in the middle of the planet, I guess, is this dome looking thing, and then it pops out like a little cube almost, and this is the source of this is where the Zhat Vash come from. So this is where their order comes from. When they touch this thing, when they touch it, this is where they get that apocalyptic vision that we've been talking about. When we hear them talk about Soji being the destroyer of tomorrow and all these things, and this vision that they have comes when they touch it. So we find out we see Commander O in their black garbs, and she's like the leader of the Zhat Vash. So Commander O, my theory about Commander O being maybe still on the side of the good thing, the side of good, is not quite accurate at all. In fact, she's the most evil one of them all, which now proves it for sure. She's the leader of the Zhat Vash, and she's got a whole, I think there's like maybe 8 or 10 of them. There's probably 8. That would make more sense. That are standing around the dome and the cube, and she warns them. She says, once you see this vision, you'll understand what our mission is, but not all of you will be able to handle it. And sure enough, when they touch it, we get this we get this vision. At first, it starts off with vision of organic life in the wound. We see cellular regeneration, which turns into an android's, like a generic android face, which then becomes Data's face for a second. And then it switches to almost that apocalyptic thing where you see things destroyed, planets destroyed, all organic life destroyed. And the madness, and it's all, and I'm pretty sure we don't see it all. But by the circle of 8 that touch it, with O looking on, they go through like what I like to call an event horizon moment. And if you've ever seen that movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, where, you know, they're like scratching at each other's skin. They don't actually tear out their eyeballs like they do in Event Horizon. Not that quite that graphic, but one shoots herself in the head with a phaser. You know, the one, like I said, scratches it, and they just fall to the ground in madness, all except for Narissa, who's there. And Narissa is able to withstand it, you know, mentally. She's shocked. She wants to know what they have to do. She's fully on board with their mission upon seeing this. But she's the only one really strong enough to not lose it. She's on the verge maybe, but she still holds herself together enough. So she's the one that's really strong enough to handle it. We find out that, remember, Ramda, our assimilated assimilated Romulan mythology expert, was with her as well. And we turns out we find out more about her as we switch back to the cube from the vision, that Ramda is actually the aunt of Narissa and Narek, and that she had taken them in and raised them. So she's like a surrogate mother to them. And she also is part of the Zad Vash and sees the vision. But the differences between Narissa and Ramda is fallen to the ground and has kind of lost her mind. Narissa picks her up because she's still alive. She hasn't killed herself or lost her mind to, you know, complete insanity, but she's not all there. And you can see the expression on her face. She's barely able to function whatsoever because of the vision, which is interesting because we go back, you know, and then we go back the whole cube scene again, and, you know, you hear Narissa explain, you know, the whole, well, they picked the wrong ship to assimilate, because what happened was when Ramda was assimilated by the Borg, her consciousness and all that, the despair, literally, of the vision itself drove the Borg mad, and the Borg decided to cut off that cube from the rest of their collective. That's how much of a threat that she, as one individual, took down an entire Borg cube the minute she was assimilated, because of the sheer madness that is going on in her mind. That's how deeply rooted and how crazy she is, that she can take down an entire collective Borg cube. Remember, the Borg active as a collective. Yes, they're controlled by, you know, they're drones like bees, and they have a queen that controls them all. But, it's still a collective mind, a very strong collective mind, and they're not able to handle it. It drives them to madness. So the Borg cut them off because of it. That shows you the sheer terror, that magnitude that's involved with this vision that they have and that they see. So a lot of things going on, and I'm going to speculate here for just a minute because there's really no evidence of it, but I think that's why they kept the Borg cube. I think because they wanted to, because I think Narissa, being Zat Vash, probably has some serious pull in the Romulan Empire, and was able to convince them to keep the cube, and that they were only using that to try to get her aunt's mind back, which was kind of slowly coming back, I guess, with the help of Hugh and a little bit of Soji there for a minute anyway. So I think that's just a little speculation there, but I think that might be exactly what was going on, and why they had the Borg cube in the first place, other than to grab its technology, obviously. Maybe that could be part of it too. So let's move on to the second scene. So that's the first part. The second part, remember, there's 3 parts here. So the second part is what I like to call the discovering, or putting the pieces together, the broken pieces back together through several different subplots. The first one I want to talk about is Dr. Girardi. So Girardi wakes up from, almost killing herself trying to get rid of the tracking device inside of her. to Picard's face, who Picard can't imagine why she's killed Maddox. She brings up, he was your confidant, your mentor, your lover. I can't understand why. And then she describes to Picard what happened, that because O is half Romulan and half Vulcan, was able to do a mind meld on her, and mind meld attacked her with the vision that, drove her to madness. And she can't talk about it because she's got some sort of psychic block, she says, but she says, do you believe in hell? And Picard doesn't really, but she goes, this vision is hell. This is hell. This is, in fact, the only way she can cope with it or console herself is to think about killing herself because of the vision. Again, a very Event Horizon kind of thing going on. You really should see that movie if you haven't, by the way. But basically, she gives him the gist of it is if synth life is allowed to exist, it will bring this vision of hell that she's had to fruition. So it will come true if this continues, and that's why she killed Maddox, etc. It also then switches to Soji and Girardi. And despite everything that she's done with Maddox and even seeing this apocalyptic vision, she's very excited and anxious to talk to Soji. She has a smile on her face. She's asking her stupid questions like, "What do you do when you're tired?" "I sleep." "What do you do when you're hungry?" "I eat." "You eat." She's like, "You eat? That's great. That's fantastic." And do you dream? Yes, etc. You have a star constellation on your cheek. That's just pure mastery. She's just in awe of Soji and the wonder of Soji, which may be a little bit real, I think, because I think Soji knows who she is, because Soji's kind of coming alive. The android part of her is coming back alive through this whole episode, and it kind of has been for even in the last episode. But I think Soji knows that Girardi has something to do with her creation. We theorize here that because Maddox said that she had a big part to play, I think it wasn't just her knowledge that helped him create the androids again, Maddox, to recreate the android, the advanced android race, but I think that she actually physically gave something. We think maybe embryos, and in a way that kind of makes, if that's true, then that kind of makes Girardi their surrogate biological mother, right? And as a result, Soji's kind of reaching out to her because she asks her an interesting question, which we don't get the answer to from Dr. Girardi, but she asks Dr. Girardi, "To you, am I a real person?" To me, that says you're looking for identity. You want to identify with your past and who you are, and you're asking essentially the person who helped create you, am I real? It's pretty heavy philosophical, existential kind of stuff. So but we don't get the answer to that. But when we come back to Girardi, she's like, "I will never, now that I know you, I will never hurt you." I don't think so. I'm going to speculate here again. I don't think so at all. I think despite everything she's done, despite her taking the tracker out and trying to be a good person again, I don't think she's quite redeemed yet. I think if that vision still haunts her to the point where she thinks about suicide as relief, then that vision is going to haunt her enough to probably want to destroy the androids again at some point. She feels personally responsible because she gave up a part of herself to create them. At least we think she did. And therefore she feels personally responsible for the end of all organic life. So therefore she feels like she has to rectify it. And I don't think that's gone away. I think that will continue. And that, unfortunately, Soji she's trusting her. I think, she helps her walk her into the big meeting. That's the next scene, next subplot here. Actually, it's not, but there's this whole bonding moment almost with her. So hopefully Soji's not betrayed again. We'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully Girardi actually helps them survive somehow in the end as a bit of a redemption, maybe. We'll see what happens though. All right, so the next subplot is what I like to call is putting Rios's past with Raffi's conspiracy theories together. So the minute that Picard beams up with Soji on board, we see Rios, and Rios is in a shell shock phase. Not only has he looked like he's seen a ghost, but he's literally shell shocked. Like, we can hear Picard trying to talk to him in the distance. It's like an explosion has gone off, you know, in war, and a really loud explosion goes off near you. I've kind of done this myself with a firework. A shell blew up in front of me. You literally, your ears ring. His ears are ringing. He's mentally checked out. He's in shock almost at the very sight of the moment he sees Soji. He's staring directly at Soji, tunnel vision on her, and he's bewildered and completely in shock. But by the time Picard finally yells at him and kind of takes him out of it, and he just says, "I'll take you to DS." He asks where, what's the nearest starbase? DS-12. "I'll take you there, but I'm done, Picard. I'm completely done." And he just takes off. He's that distraught, that emotionally distraught by the sheer image of seeing her again, puts him back into some sort of emotional trauma, traumatization. Like, it's bringing up all his demons have been brought to the surface automatically, and it's just too much for him to deal with at that moment. So that happens. Raffi, after she kind of goes off on Picard for, hey, you were wrong about Dr. Girardi. She's a murderer and a double agent and blah, 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 and gets kind of her satisfaction in that. She kind of turns to find Rios. But instead of running into Rios has activated all of his holographic programs and has retreated to his quarters. So he wants to be completely isolated and alone and doesn't want to see anybody. So he turns on the full, there's 5 different, we've kind of seen them before, the 5 emergency holographic programs, right? One is a navigator, one is an engineer, one is a hospitality program, one is, I'm missing the other 2. One is a weapons specialist, and I can't remember the 5th one. Anyway, so there's 5 of them. And what Raffi finds out through them is, first she brings up the whole, how she keeps, when she was watching the video of the Borg cube, she kept on seeing the Borg draw that octary star system, a map of it. It's, the 8 different suns circling each other and the one planet in the middle. And when she brings us up to the navigation EMH, she goes, "Well, that kind of looks like an octary star system." He said, "But they don't. They're theoretical." He said, "There's like a 7 one, but it's extremely. There's a couple of 7 ones out there, 7 star systems that rotate like that, but they're very, very rare, and that he's never seen an 8, an 8.1." And then when she runs into his engineer EMH, she asks him the question. And he's like, "It has to be made. It can't be made naturally. It has to be engineered. Somebody engineered this." Raffi puts all that together, and using her little conspiracy theory mind, because she's putting this whole thing of the 8 with her conclave of 8 theory that, the Romulans were behind the Mars attack. Well, now she's starting to evolve it. And she's like, well, why would somebody do that intentionally? Go out of their way, except unless they wanted to leave a warning. So she's come to the same conclusion logically that the Zhat Vash have come to without seeing the vision. So, which worries me a little bit, because up to this point, Raffi has always been right. Always. Her gut instinct has always been right. Even though she didn't have the evidence to back it up, all of her theories have always proven right, which happens with the conclave theory. Although she's off a little bit on the 8 thing, she's right. Turns out she's right. So that worries me, that her first instinct is that this is indeed a warning. That could actually be that maybe the bad guys are right. Maybe Zhat Vash and the androids are destroyers, but I don't think so, and I'll explain later. But it does enough to leave you just a little bit of doubt in your head going forward. So Raffi, in order to get, I guess, after she's got that going on in her head, she's also wants to know why Rios went into his excuse me, why Rios went into his withdrawal, right? Pardon me. A lot of talking. So why did he withdraw? Why is he emotionally distraught? He's her friend, so she wants to know, and she wants to know so badly that she puts together the 5 holographic programs. Well, it turns out these 5 holographic programs don't just look like him, but they are an extension of him. So they're kind of like his memories, or they have parts of his memories. He's gone in and deleted certain sections, but together they're able to kind of put together a picture slightly. They're like, well, I kind of think it's there. It's like, but they know it's been deleted. They're like, I remember the ghost of it being there. Like, one of them knows that the person that looks like Soji is named Jaina, and that they were beamed aboard together with another person, and it was on his old ship, the Imbid Majid, which was his old Starfleet vessel. And we find out that his captain's name was Captain Vandermeer. Captain Vandermeer, who we find out killed himself in front of Rios. So she gets like all this basic information just by pulling the 5 together. And they're all different personality types. So they're kind of like extensions of himself, which is kind of an interesting point, an interesting story point, that these EMHs are maybe even different parts of his personality. They each represent a different part of himself. I don't know. It'd be interesting to explore if down the line maybe, or something, but it's kind of a cool way of looking at it, right? But by pulling these people together, she's able to figure that out, that there was a girl named that looked just like Soji named Jana, that it was on board the Imid Majid, and that his captain did kill himself, and his captain Vandermeer is there. And then we're going to switch from that to Rios, real Rios, in his quarters. He's been drinking pretty heavily, and we pan over and we see a Starfleet locker, Starfleet symbols on it. He opens it up. It's from his time on the Majid, and you see that there's some other stuff that actually says Imid Majid on it, and in there is a cigar box, and it's kind of cool that they use a cigar box, because my dad had one when a cigar in it from one cigar left from when I was born as a kid, and he had other personal effects in his top drawer. So I related to that pretty easily. So, he's got some really cool personal effects in there. We see his little insignias, the little dots that indicate his rank and how he probably moved up. We see ensign, we see lieutenant, we see lieutenant commander, and eventually commander. In his ranks, that's all in there. There's a little alien skull, but there's a picture, and it's a picture of him and Captain Vandermeer, and then there's also this like piece of paper, and it's like a hand sketch drawing, like with a pencil drawing, and it's a picture of him with this Jaina girl who is basically Soji, right? Looks identical to Soji. So, we get all that. Finally, I guess Raffi makes her way into his quarters and sits down next to him, and Rios kind of tells the story and finishes the story. So apparently the Jaina girl and a male ambassador who called himself Perfect Flower. Okay, right. All right. So there is a male androids, apparently. This one called himself Perfect Flower. Okay, whatever. But Jaina was kind of like his assistant, we find out, and that they were beamed aboard, and they were considered, a new race with warp capable. They had a ship with warp capability. They'd never run into Starfleet before. Starfleet hadn't run into them as far as they knew. So they initiated what's called First Contact Protocol, which if you've watched any of TNG or any other, or later Star Trek series, that there's a first contact protocol, basically meaning once a society hits warp level technology, then their Starfleet will contact them and try to make first contact with them, and usually there's an invite eventually into the Starfleet community. It's the same way the Vulcans did with, if you watched the movie First Contact with Zephyr Cochrane, when he created the warp drive capability. In fact, I think they even call it the Cochrane Doctrine. So, so when they reach this threshold, then first contact is made. And that's important for later, by the way. Put a pin in that. Again, excuse me, a lot of talking here. Rios goes on with this story that his captain is contacted by Commander O, who's now the head of Starfleet security, or is pretty high up anyway. I guess I would imagine she's probably already the head of security, because she orders his captain, Captain Vandermeer, to kill both the androids, or she will unleash an attack force and destroy the Imit Majid with all hands on board. So not just destroy the ship, but destroy the entire crew, that everybody that's on board, all the Starfleet. She's willing to do that. So obviously he does it. He kills them, and then when Rios goes in to confront him why he did it, he tells him why he did it, but then out of despair himself puts a phaser in his mouth and blows his brains out right in the front of Rios. And then Rios is left he has to cover up. He has to do what his captain was supposed to do, and they beam the bodies into space. They erase all record of the ship ever existing, apparently, and they cover it all up, and then they release Rios 6 months later for being crazy out of Starfleet. So he's used, and then he's traumatized, he's used, he's tossed aside. He wasn't crazy, but as Raffi says, he was just broken as a result of all that. So we get all that traumatic experience. So obviously Rios has direct contact in the past with the advanced android race. So that brings us to the next scene, which is the meeting at the table, the cafeteria table, whatever you want to call it, which is kind of where they throw all the rest of the pieces together for us. Remember, they're putting all these pieces together. So based on all the information that we've gotten so far, Raffi extrapolates that she believes that the Zat Vash, when Data probably arrived on the scene in the Starfleet, and they probably implanted Commander O into Starfleet, and then over time she had worked her way up, through the ranks until she became the Commodore and head of Starfleet security, and distinguished herself, and while that was going on. And then she goes on further that she was the one that, and she points out to Picard saying, I was right. It was the Romulans. That was her, because Commander O is half Romulan, half Vulcan, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, but that the Romulans were the ones behind the Mars attack. They were the ones that instigated the whole thing, so that Commander O could get android, any further creation of synthetic life or development anywhere in the galaxy, outlawed, which she was successful with. But she said she wasn't done there, because she was still looking for the android homeworld that Gina and this perfect flower ambassador male android had come from. And that brought us up to this point here. The other point that's brought up is that the belief in the destroyer, right, is when, so not only is the Zat Vash created because of the vision, but in addition, they throw this extra little tidbit in there, is that when they reach a certain level, when a society reaches a certain threshold, much like warp technology, like we talked about earlier, when advanced android life reaches a certain threshold, that's going to bring in some sort of ancient enemy, right? So 200,000 years ago, a race created this very complex octary system, put the planet in the middle, and left the warning that the Zat Vash think is, if you create this if you create synthetic life and it gets to this certain level, that this dark force, unseen, unknown, will arise and destroy all life, just like they did to this advanced race 200,000 years ago. They don't know the name of the race that built the Octarius system, and they don't know the name of the race this dark force that comes and destroys things out, everything, because they see synthetic life as an abomination, kind of like the Zadvash do. So they're borrowing very heavily here from Earth religion and end of the world concepts here, but you get the idea. So in addition to her being the destroyer and the catalyst, so not only they named Soji enemy number one, or at least somebody that looks like Soji is enemy number one, as their, they call it depth something. I should have wrote it down. It's like their version of the Antichrist. They got that going on. But if they do in addition to that, if they allow synthetic life to evolve to this threshold limit, then this darkness is going to come out of nowhere with this ancient advanced alien race that's in hiding somewhere, and will come and destroy all organic life. And that's how they interpret the vision. So very interesting stuff. The only other side point to this whole episode, and I should have brought this up earlier, is Rios proves to Soji that he knows androids because he offers her apparently French fries with peppermint, and apparently androids like to dip French fries in peppermint. So so that's how he proves to her that he knew Jaina and everything. So that kind of brings us to the end of the the whole second point plot of this episode. We'll get back into it at the very end, but let's move on to the third plot that's going on in the episode, and that's we get a new Borg Queen. Well, for about 2 seconds anyway. To me, this continues to be the weakest of the subplots, of the plots that's going on in this entire series. I've actually expected a lot more with the Borg. The Borg are kind of like just a subplot idea. They're not tied in yet, and I'm still waiting to see how that happens. I always thought that the android and the Borg would somehow merge or something, because they have that technology in common. We've seen Data try to be captured by the Borg Queen in the past, all that stuff from the First Contact movie. So I've always expected more from the Borg storyline, but so far it's been the weakest. It's been the one with the least amount of writing and setup, and it kind of continues here. So 7 of 9 comes because Elnor in the last episode summoned her. She shows up, saves him. They go to the Borg chamber, and then she reactivates the Borg cube. So kind of like we've seen in the past where the Borg cube kind of regenerates. Now we actually see a close-up version, and it's actually a bunch of maybe not even nano, just little robots crawling all over the cube, rebuilding it. Obviously, the Zadvash Romulans, Narissa sees that, and they come up with a plan to counteract, because they know she's probably going to activate all of what's left of the actual Borg drones. Unfortunately, though, when we get to that point where she can connect herself, where 7-9 can connect herself to the cube, she holds off because she's afraid. She's afraid that because she says she can create like a localized Borg collective with her as the queen, with her as the voice of it. But she's afraid that they wouldn't be connected to the greater Borg collective, but she could create it on this local level, if you will, Borg collective on this Borg, but her fear is if she connects herself, she won't want to release the drones, or would she release herself from the cube. And because of that hesitation, the Zadvash Romulans have time to come up with a counter plan, and immediately they start killing the XBs, and she sees that. She connects herself, but it's too late. When she starts activating, it's really cool for about 2 seconds. She connects herself through the spine. Her eyes go black, the green comes into the black, and you hear the collective voice with hers saying, "We are Borg." She doesn't say resistance is futile, but essentially, you're like, oh shit, here comes that moment. This is it. We're going to see the Borg back with 7 of 9 as the Queen. Unfortunately, though, the Zodvash Romulans have time to counteract it. They open up the force fields and send all the Borg drone into space. So it's that there's a letdown for me right there, because I was kind of, okay, we're gonna get this really cool moment, this really fan service moment. That doesn't happen. Pulls back. They tease us with it and they pull it back. Then eventually she sends the XBs in, almost like I don't know what you would call it. I would call it like XB drone. They're acting like drones anyway. They're acting like Borg drones, and they're kind of like zombies. They just keep coming at Narissa and her Romulan on the Borg, her Zodvash Romulans, and taking them out. And eventually they overwhelm Narissa, and it looks like they're going to grab her, and then Narissa gets beamed out. And then basically all you get after that is 7 of 9 saying they leave. They take off for the android homeworld on their ships, and all you hear 7 of 9 is, we've retaken the cube. The cube is ours. And then Elnor goes, well, what's left? Are you going to assimilate me now? And then you get a kind of a surprise moment. You hear the Borg, 7 of 9 Borg Queen go, no, Annika still has work left to do, and disconnects herself from it and becomes 7 of 9 again. I guess she kind of beat the temptation, but it sounds like she may return one day, to me. Like, the option is there. Like if Annika didn't still have personal things to do, they might have started assimilating people. Maybe. Because remember, 7 of 9 isn't exactly... I will say she's lost her humanity. There's still some good essence left in her, but she's seeing things much more darkly. She murders the person that murdered her, what she considers to be her son. She gets revenge for that. She's seen the darker side of humanity, and it's now kind of dwelling there herself. So for her to go from that to becoming a full-time Borg Queen wouldn't be that far of a jump. But she's released. Why she doesn't stay in the Borg Queen and send the Borg ship to help Picard, I don't know. I don't know how she thinks that she can be more help as 7 of 9 to them. I'm not sure. But that's kind of where we leave with that whole Borg. Again, the weakest plot line so far in the series, and so far the biggest letdown. So again, doesn't look like the Borg are going to be involved in the final conflict, at least not yet. Unless that's kind of the big surprise twist plot. But what 7 of 9 can do as 7 of 9 instead of 7 of 9 Borg Queen, I'm not sure. Again, I'll leave it open. Maybe the last 2 episodes will be a reward for it, but I don't know. Or they're just trying to keep her character, on the good side because she's a popular character from past series and a fan favorite. Maybe that's what it is. That she's still able to hold on to her humanity despite it all, despite the temptation, maybe. But I think she would be much more help with Picard as the Borg Queen. All right, so that's the main 3 kind of sub plots going on in the episode. There's a couple last episode, or a couple scenes that I think still need to be talked about because they don't really quite fit, but they're really good ones. The first one is Picard and Soji at the let's call it the breakfast table or whatever, and they're eating there, and Picard, Soji's like, I don't even know if I like eggs, and and Picard tries to sympathize with her, like, I have no idea what that's like, not to know who, a shadow of who you are, et cetera, and he's sympathizing with her, and then they start talking about Data, and she goes, tell me about Data, and Picard goes into all his good traits. He was childlike, he was optimistic, he had childlike curiosity, he was a good person, and describes to Soji what's going on. Now, Soji, I think, is actually just kind of testing Picard here to see if she can really trust him. But she goes further. She goes, well, what if roles are reversed? If, how do you think Data felt about you? If you had, and he goes, well, you mean if roles were reversed and I had died and he had survived? And he goes, I would hope that he would remember me as a person that helped him when he needed help, and I stayed out of the way when he didn't, and I was there for him. And she goes, did you love him? And he stops just short of it, and he goes, well, Commander Data was not exactly good with emotion, and neither was I, and that's something we kind of had in common. But then she reveals, and this is the big reveal, she goes, he loved you. So it proves that Data's memories and somewhat of Data's consciousness is in Soji. And if it's in Soji, then more than likely it's in all of them. His DNA, remember how those neurons said they could reconstitute all of Data, of who Data was, all of his memories, all his everything. So everything that he learned, with the TNG crew and beyond is somewhere inside those positronic matrices of the androids. And so that's kind of a big reveal. So, and something, put a pin in that because we'll come back to it in the last scene. But the other scene in between that I want to talk about, I just thought was funny, is the Picard and Admiral Clancy scene. And he's just tearing her up. He's like, wow, see, the windmills have become giants. You thought I was senile. You thought I was crazy. But see, there really was a problem here. And I want an attack fleet, blah, blah, blah. And and if you tell me Starfleet isn't up to the task, and he starts just throwing all this political stuff at her, and she actually stops him. She calls him Admiral. So she shows more respect for him in some ways anyway. She actually gives him the respect and calls him Admiral Picard instead of, gives him the respect of rank even. So she's acknowledging he's right in that way, but she goes, shut the fuck up. You're getting your attack fleet. They'll be at DS-12. Meet us there. Clancy out. Just thought it was a funny scene. I thought it was vindication for him. He does the clapping of his hands. He's finally vindicated, and it's just a nice moment to see after all the humiliation and maybe not so much humiliation, but humbling that Picard goes through the series, that something is finally paying off his way at the end of all this. So hopefully that holds, and hopefully that the Federation is the good guys, and we'll be there to support them at the end, hopefully. Okay, so the final scene, which kind of puts a little bow on everything. They're on their way to take Soji back to her android homeworld because they've talked about the Zhat Vash threat, and they're coming. And Rios it's Picard and Rios, and Picard talks about his former captain and how he knew them, or how he knew of him through his captain's captain, kind of 6 degrees separation kind of thing. And he goes further, and Rios goes, well, what if they're right about her being the destroyer? And and then Picard, I actually took this right out of there. Zhat Vash, this is exactly what he says. Zhat Vash sets a trap for the Federation, but instead of sidestepping it, they gave way to fear, talking about the Mars colony attack. But he goes, he goes on about how the past is written, but we have powerful tools to write the future with. We have openness, optimism, and the spirit of curiosity. All the Zhat Vash has is secrecy and fear is the great destroyer. What's funny here to me, and what took me back, is when he talks about openness, optimism, and spirit of curiosity. Those are the same traits he was talking about in Data. So you see, because we get the reveal that Data does exist in all these androids, that's Picard's great hope, that everything that he learned about humanity from Picard and the rest of the TNG crew, and how he became this really great person, this unselfish person who sacrificed his life for his captain at the end, that level of duty, commitment, openness, curiosity, optimism, all the good stuff that was Data exists in every one of these androids. And that's Picard's hope is for the future, is that's what's going to make the difference, and that's what's going to keep synthetic life from going Terminator, going on people. And that's the saving grace, is that they're going to defend themselves when threatened, but they're going to be there for the collective good, not be a major threat. So that's pretty much that's where the episode ends. But it's I have a couple theories though, and I think one is this: after watching all this, I think the message that the Zatvash are given is misinterpreted. I think the whole system being octenary in nature and being engineered in nature speaks to the android, not to the organic human or organic life or alien life or anything. It's because it's engineered and it's precise that the message is actually for the androids, and that when the Zatvash and the Romulan Zatvash try to communicate with this device, they get a vision, but because it's such a data download into the brains, they can't handle it, and they're only getting bits and pieces. It may indeed, yes, be a warning of some kind, but the full message isn't received, because only an android in the first place could interpret it and fully understand it, whereas organic life, that's even psychic organic life in this case, in the Romulan, whatever, Vulcan species, can only handle so much. And because of that, they're only getting part of the message. They're seeing the androids, and that's great, but the rest of it, they're skipping maybe to the end, to the apocalyptic part of the warning. And they're not getting into the in-between details of maybe how to stop this force from coming. And maybe the androids are actually the thing that's going to stop it. But they need the data from the message. And I think that's that's just my theory so far. I could be way off, but I think that's what's going on. Or the warning is somewhat true, and in that case, a great ancient power invisible to see what's going to rise and take them all out for creating the abomination of synthetic life. But I really think it's the first. So those are just my theories so far on what I think is a great episode. And speaking of which, my final thoughts and grades, I'm going to go as high as we've been using the old 1 to 10 scale, and we've been holding back grades. I'm going to give us my highest grade yet. It's a 9.0. I want to give it a 9.5. It's a great episode. There's not a lot of action, but it really brings the whole picture together. Like, you're getting, this guy's background, you get Rios' background story that feeds in. You get Rafi and her conspiracy theory evolving put in. You get the destroyer theory put in, and it all starts to make sense. Yes, is it convenient for the plot? Yes, it is. But I think it's necessary for us to understand all this before we take the leap into the next two episodes, to understand, to give us all this background information and have it solid, because I think it's going to reveal the last few mysteries that are left and how it's all going to evolve. So they have to do this at this point, because we only got 2 episodes left. We just finished episode 8. We got 9 and 10, and that's the end of season 1. So a lot of things are answered, a lot of things are made clear, and we're moving full steam ahead. And I can't wait for the next 2 episodes. So definitely my highest grade. Maybe not the best episode in the series, because we were holding back grades earlier, but it is definitely up there. So there you go. All right, so if that's our conclusion of our review today. But if you like this podcast and you want to know where you can find us at, you can use you can see my graphic here for the blind. Your best place to go, guys, is www.4midwestguys.com. Again, that's the 4midwestguys.com. That's our blog/website. All of our video podcasts and audio podcasts are listed there in chronological order. There's categories at the top for all of our different shows, and we have quite a few. We do a Picard show. We do a Clone Wars show. We were doing an XFL show, which is on hold right now because of everything that's going on with the coronavirus. I'll go ahead and say it. But there are links to other shows that we've done in the past. We did a Star Wars Rebels. I think we started season 2. All the way from season 2 through the conclusion of that series is on there. Things are archived on there. You can see where we make our jump to video and where we started doing movie reviews, blockbuster movie reviews. Heavily on the Star Wars, because I'm a big Star Wars, not as well as Star Trek, so more Star Wars than Star Trek, but still. Also on the website is links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Apple Podcasts, our Podbean, all that stuff. You can follow, like, and subscribe across the board. Links to our YouTube pages, which is where all our videos are stored. Speaking of which, I want to give out a very big thank you real quick to everybody who helped us with the YouTube. We were trying to get 100 subscribers. We're currently at 107. So thank you very much for that. We're new to YouTube, so that helps us out greatly. You'll now here shortly, I'll request that, because right now we're just kind of youtube.com with a bunch of letters and numbers. I can now request to make it youtube.com/4MidwestGuys. So thank you very much for that. However, if you do just want to find us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/4MidwestGuys. Find us on Twitter at 4MidwestGuys. You can find myself at bwilly1977. You can find Mr. Ankenbauer at Angzone. You can find us on Instagram at 4_Midwest_guys, where you'll get more pictures and stuff, especially of the studio rework here. Is on there, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. If you want to do good old fashioned email, it's 4midwestguys@gmail.com. So you can kind of see the general theme here is 4 Midwest Guys. So reach out. There's all kinds of ways to log in, to follow, like, and subscribe us. Plenty of ways to reach out to us and get in touch with us. And we would love to hear from you. I know Brian does as well. And Brian's he worked his butt off to get us that first 100 subscribers on YouTube. So I want to thank him as well, even though he's not here today. But I want to thank you guys as well for making that possible for us. So thank you, and thank you again. However, thank you for everything. Thanks for listening to me and putting up with my dry throat as I flew solo on this one. Hopefully Brian will be back next week, and we can get our schedules to line up a little bit better. And but until then, everyone, that I've been your host, B. Willie, and saying live long and live prosper. Talk to you later.